Assalamu'alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hello everyone, we are from Group 6. Would like to deliver the material with title Gender, Politeness and Stereotype. There are Galih, Rayi Pradana, Nenden Nurul, Sindi Melia and Yohana Nurmala as the member of this group. And Sindi Melia would like to deliver the first part of this material, that is, Woman's Language and Confidence. Robin Lakoff, an American linguist, argued that women were using language which reinforced their subordinate status. They were colluding in their own subordination by the way they spoke. Robin Lakoff shifted the focus of research on gender differences to syntax, semantics, and style. She identified a number of linguistic features which she claimed were used more often by women than by men, and which in her opinion express uncertainty and lack of confidence. Features of woman's language. This is the example. This quotation illustrates the kind of statement which betrayed lack of linguistic expertise among this early investigation of Lakoff's claims about woman's speech. No linguist would describe, "Will you please close the door? Will you please close the door?" as an imperative construction, and the expression imperative construction in question form confuses form and function. The internal coherence of the features Lakoff identified can be illustrated by dividing them into two groups. Firstly, there are linguistic devices which may be used for hedging or reducing the force of an utterance. Secondly, there are features which may boost or intensify a proposition's force. Researchers who recognize this functional unified factor included in their analysis any form which had a hedging or boosting effect on an assertion. Overall, however, Lakoff's claim that women use more hedging and boosting devices than men. Lakoff linguistic features as politeness devices. The tag question is a syntactic devices listed by Lakoff which may express uncertainty, as example 5 illustrates. Susan is uncertain about the date, and she indicates this with a tag which signals doubt about what she is asserting. This tag focuses on the referential meaning of Susan's assertion, the accuracy of the information she is giving, but tags may also express affecting meaning. They may function as facilitative or positive politeness devices, providing an address with an easy entry into a conversation, as illustrated in next slide. This is table 12.1. Summarizes the patterns found in a many of words corpus containing equal amounts of female and male speech collected in a range of matched contexts. It is clear that this corpus, the women use more than a few of tags of men, as Lakoff predicted. But more interesting is the fact that women and men use them more often for different functions. Women put more emphasis than men on the polite or effective function of tags. using them as facilitative positive politeness devices. Men, on the other hand, use more text for the expression of uncertainty. Many of features which have been identified as characteristic of women's language are positive politeness devices expressing solidarity. There are many other factors which are also relevant when comparing women's and men's use of language, including culture, social role, and the formality of the context. Enough from me. Thanks.
Alright, we would like to discuss about in this slide. We can see about the difference between interaction and interruption. So, what is interaction? Interaction is a kind of action that occurs as two or more objects have an effect upon one another. So, the idea of a two-way effect is essential in the concept of interaction as opposed to a one-way causal effect. Closely related terms are interactivity and interconnectivity, of which the latter deals with the interactions of interactions within systems. Combinations of many simple interactions can lead to surprising emergent phenomena. And how about interruption? Interruption is an act of interrupting something or someone or the state of being interrupted. And interruption also is conversation that is carried out when the interrupt has an intention. Interruption is very likely to occur when a conversation occurs, so we must know when to use interruption and how to respond to the interruptions that occur. So let's discuss about the next slide. Alright, at this slide, we can see about the conversation between Wanda and Ralph in the topic interruptions. So I would like to present about the result between the conversation from Wanda and Ralph. Ralph here illustrates a pattern for which there is a great deal of research evidence. The most widely quoted study, it collected examples of students exchanged in coffee bars, shops, and other public places on a tape recorder carried by one of the researchers. These researchers followed up this study with one which recorded interactions in soundproof booth in a laboratory. Around percentage, it has got around 75% in this less natural setting, but there was no doubt that men were still doing most of the interrupting. In other contexts, too, it has been found that men interrupt others more than women do. So, in departmental meetings and doctor-patient interactions, for instance, the pattern holds. So, we can see about the table, which the table discuss about same-sex interaction and cross-sex interaction. The result of same-sex interaction at speaker 1, it is around 43% of interruptions. For speaker 2, it is around 57%. How about cross-sex interaction between women and men? Women has got interruptions around 4% and men is 96%. Okay, next we can see about turn speaking time and interruptions in 7-staff meetings. There are many speakers who named woman A, woman B, woman C, woman D, man E, man F, man G, man H, and man I. We can see about average turns per meeting from woman A until man I, average number of seconds per turn, average number of seconds per turn, average did interrupt per meeting, and average was interrupted per meeting. The question for this table is, does the data support the claims made above concerning women's and men's interaction patterns from this table? Who talks most, men or women? Do the men interrupt more than the women? Okay, let's interpret this data accurately. Okay, the answer is overall the data supports the claims made. Most of the men spoke more often and for longer than most of the women. Most of the men interrupted more than the women, with only one man interrupting as little as the woman who did most interrupting. Note, however, that men also tended to be interrupted more than women, possibly a function of the fact that they were more often talking. The data raises a number of questions. Men E interrupts much less than other men. For example, what differentiates him from his male colleagues? Why is woman D so much more talkative than her female colleagues? Information on relative status and interactional role might be helpful in interpreting the data number. Do high status women talk and interpret less than low status men? Alright, one more. Do high status women talk and interrupt less than low status men? Does the role of group leader or chair lead to a reduction or an increase in talk? The answers to these questions might assist considerably in interpreting the data more fully and satisfactorily. Alright, everybody, we can see two conversations. In the first conversation, we can see about the woman and man who are talking about, and the second conversation is Mary and Jill. Alright, next to discuss about the question, which the question is compare the transcript and identify specific examples in these transcripts of the patterns of interaction. Alright, let's go. Alright, let's answer. In the first example, there are 4 cases where the man interferes with the woman and no models where he gives consolation to her to build up her topic. He doesn't give her an occasion to discuss her paper. He answers her question and then, as she responds sympathetically, he interrupts with a request for a cigarette. At the point when she starts to inform him regarding her paper, he hinders again with a solicitation for a match. He intrudes on her third endeavor to enlighten him regarding her paper with a reason and leaves. In the second example, on the other hand, there are 5 occasions of urging criticism from Jill to Mary. Alright everybody, the differences between women and men in ways of interacting may be the result of different socialization and acculturation patterns. If we learn ways of taking mainly in single-gender peer groups, then the patterns we learn are likely to be gender-specific, and the kind of miscommunication which undoubtedly occurs between women and men may well be attributable to the different expectations each gender has of the function of the interaction and the ways it is appropriately conducted. Alright, the next topic will be discussed by my friend.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Yohana Nurmala. In this previous occasion, I would like to present my material about gossip and the linguistic construction of gender. The first I would like to present about gossip. Gossip is conversation or report about other people's private lives that might be unkind, disapproving, or not proving. Gossip are too by internet or by your mind. Usually, gossip talking about habit, illness, family, personal issues. Why people do gossip? The first one is social living, light and pleasant chat, a powerful way to divert the conversation that leads to personal problems. Fourth, talking about other people's shortcomings sometimes makes you superior. And the last, curiosity about other people's life. Social living. As social beings, humans have made gossip a means of social interaction with others. Meaning of light and pleasant chat is gossiping doesn't require the brain to work hard to think, such as discussing economic and political issues. You just need a victim to discuss the flaws. An example is a neighbor who comes home too late. The third, a powerful way to divert the conversation that leads to personal problems. In the meaning, not a few people are uncomfortable with personal issues being discussed openly. Therefore, it's better to sacrifice someone else to serve as a distraction. And talking about other people's shortcomings sometimes make you superior is because when talking about other people weakness, it indirectly makes you feel better than them. And the last in this point, curiosity about other people's life. In the meaning is everyone must have a sense of curiosity. However, the size of the curiosity depends on each person. Do you want to obey the ego or try to hold back for those who can't stand it? Gossip becomes an escape to fulfill the satisfaction of their curiosity. In here, I have graphic about who is hobby about gossip. Statistics shows 55% male have to ability gossip and 67% female have to ability for gossip. The next material about the linguistic construction of gender. In here, I have introduction about gender. Gender refers to the socially constructed characteristic of women and men, such as norms, roles, and relationships of and between groups of women and men. Language and gender is an area of study within sociolinguistics, applied linguistic, and related fields that investigates varieties of speech associated with a particular gender, or social norms for such gendered language use. Language and gender refers to the relationship between the language of male and female. Next slide present about language and gender theories. According to deficit approach theory of Lakoff, 1975, women's use of particular linguistic strategies reflects their deficiency and subordinate status. According to Spender, 19 and 1985. The theory is the dominance approach. Women as opposite language users and interprets male dominance through language as manifestation of a particular order. And the last, according to Nenden 1990, the theory is the difference approach. The meaning is women and men distinct but equally valid communicate styles. The next slide, I have a word commonly used to describe. Usually, female use dependent, emotional, passive, sensitive, quiet, graceful, innocent, weak, flirtatious, nurturing, self-critical, soft, sexually submissive, and accepting. Meanwhile, male, they are independent, non-emotional, aggressive, tough-skinned, competitive, clumsy, experienced, strong, active, self-confident, hard, sexually aggressive, and rebellious. And in here, I have to concern is language. In the linguistic literature, perhaps the most famous example of gender differentiation is found in the Lesser Antilles of the West Indies among the Carib Indians. Male and female Caribs have been reported to speak different language. Conquest in which a group of invading Carib-speaking men killed the local Arawak-speaking men and met with the Arawak woman. The descendants of these Carib-speaking men and Arawak-speaking women have sometimes been described as having different language for men and women because boys learn Carib speaking from their father and girls Arawak speaking from their mothers. Actually, phonology, morphology, and vocabulary and grammatical are different between male and female. In here, sociolinguistic universal tendencies, according to M.Hum 1998, have 5 points. The first one is women and men develop different patterns of language use. The second is women tend to focus on the affective function of an interaction more often than men do. Women tend to use linguistic devices that stress solidarity more often than men do. Women tend to interact in ways which will maintain and increase solidarity, while men tend to interact in ways which will maintain and increase their power and status. And the last is women are stylistically more flexible than men. And we have possible explanation. Number one is many researchers agree that men speak more than women do. Number two is when men talk to men, the content categories of such talk focus on competition and teasing, sport, aggression, and doing things. Number three, when women talk to women, the equivalent categories were their self, feelings, affiliation with others, home, and family. And the last is women are also reported to use more polite forms and more compliments than men. For addition, men, I have simple explanation. Language can be sexist. The first claim is that men and women are biologically different and that this difference has serious consequences for gender. The second claim is that social organization is based perceived as some kind of hierarchical set of power relationship. The third claim is that men and women are social beings who have learned to act in certain ways. And the last is language behavior is largely learned behavior. Men learn to be men and women learn to be women, linguistically speaking. I think enough for my explanation. Thank you for attention. Sorry when I make mistake. Wabillahi taufiq wal hidayah. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
The linguistic construction of sexuality. In many societies, the discourse of gender convey a message that heterosexuality is normal, and that people who desire same-sex partners are in some way odd or deviant. The English word queer, when we use to refer to such people, used to convey this derogatory assumption of deviancy. It was reclaimed in the late 20th century by the group that it was used to describe, so that it is now generally not regarded as insulting. At least in the USA and New Zealand, and it has developed the new meanings. For some, the term queer now include all those who reject orthodox assumptions about what is considered normal in the area of sexuality and desire. Gay men, lesbian women, transvestites, transgender, and intersex people. For others, it has simply become an alternative to gay, to perhaps with less unambiguously positive connotation. It will no doubt continue to develop new meanings as new labels develop to describe non-normative sexuality and desire. Examining the relationship between language and sexuality involves considering how people construct their sexual identity as gay, heterosexual, lesbian, or bisexual, for instance, and desire, and engage in sexual activities. How do young women indicate to young men that they are interested in them as potential sexual partners? What are the features of the courtship rituals and indifference these societies? What are the discourse features of coming out stories? Who tells dirty jokes to whom, why, and how? How is the discourse of sex education managed in the school? These are the kind of topics that researchers in the area of language and sexuality consider interesting. The earlier section of this chapter describes of the linguistic features used to index gender in English. Heterosexual people typically make normative choice in most contexts constructing themselves as feminine or masculine, and thereby signaling their sexuality. Homosexual people may use the same linguistic features to convey the same meanings in many contexts, but there is a good deal of research, especially on features of the speech of homosexual men, which indicate that they may draw on additional linguistic researches for indicating their sexual orientation through their speech. Researchers have identified a number of features associated with English gay speech, including the use stereotypically feminine vocabulary items such as defined features of pronunciation, such as affrication, so that sounds like ts, wavy intonation, and dramatic variation in pitch. But of course, it is not the case that all and only gay people have such features. Moreover, many of these features prove to be ephemeral since they are based on the speech of people from particular social, regional, and ethnic backgrounds at a particular point in time. Variation in the sexuality construct by lesbians in Japanese bars and by Hindi-speaking lesbians in New Delhi further emphasizes the fact that there is no such phenomenon as a universal gay variety, even when researchers focus on just one language. More interesting in the suggestion that contain rhetorical strategies can index sexuality. Talk, for example, is widely regarded as indexing homosexuality through features such as exaggeration, parody, paradox, inversion of expected relationship, and linguistic playfulness. So, for example, Talk may deliberately misregister or refer to males as she, or challenge well established cultural values, as in the connotation. This is an example. Make use of diverse double meaning in amusing insult. Example: the one charm of marriage is that it makes a life of deception absolutely necessary for both parties. Oscar Wilde. If love is the answer, could you please rephrase the question? Lily Tomlin. And the other example is, my dear, your hair looks as if you have died, said Bruce Rogers. The kind of talk is often amusing but also deliberately disrespectful and disturbing. It challenges hegemonic heterosexual culture and construct those who use it as non-conformist. Intimate talk is another area which often breaks taboos in expressing sexuality and sexual intimate. talk is another area which often breaks taboos in expressing sexuality and sexual desire. Couples may address and refer to each other as animals or use baby talk to express intimacy and desire. At the other extreme, telephone sex operators serving heterosexual clients typically construct sexual identities, which are completely conformist and predictable. They make extensive use of the features identified by Lecoq as woman language, described above to convey a powerless, vulnerable, and thus. In the context of the transaction erotic femininity, personal aids aimed at attraction a heterosexual partner are similarly very conventional and in what they focus in the few words available. For example, A. Georgios Blonde, female 22, 6 Mart, rich, generous female for fun and friendship. Example B is male IT programmer, 26, honest and caring, 6, curvy blonde, female 23 until 28, fun to be with for lasting relationship. Sexist language. In 1980, an American linguist, Dwight Bollinger, published a book called Language: The Loaded Weapon. In it, he explored the wide variety of ways in which the English language provides categories and ways of encoding experience which could be regarded as loaded. In other words, carrying implicit value judgment or manipulating response. Alongside discussion of the language used in advertising and politics, he also considered the area of sexist language. Sexist language is one example of the way a culture or society conveys its values from one group to another and from one generation to the next. Language convey attitude, sexist attitude, stereotype a person according to gender rather than judging on individual merits. Sexist language encode stereotype attitude to women and men. In principle, then the study of sexist language is concerned with the way language expresses both negative and positive stereotypes of both women and men. In practice, research in this area has concentrated on the ways in which language convey negative attitude to women. So, can a language to be sexist? Can a language be sexist? Feminists have claimed that English is a sexist language. At first sight, it may seem odd to suggest that a language rather than its speakers are sexist. Sexism involves behavior which maintains social inequalities between women and men, Can a language contribute to the maintenance of social inequalities between women and men? There are a number of ways in which it has been suggested that the English language discriminates against women. Most obviously, perhaps in the semantic area, the English metaphors available to describe women include an extraordinarily high number of derogatory images compared to those used to describe men. Example: the chicken metaphor tells the whole story of a girl's life. In her youth, she is a chick. Then she marries and begins feeling cooped up. So she goes to hen parties where she cackles with her friends. Then she has her brood and begins to handpick her husband. Finally, she turns into an old biddy. Animal imagery is one example of an area where the image of woman seems considerably less positive than those for men. Consider the negativity of beach, old biddy, and cow compared this to stud and wolf. Animal imagery, which refer to men, often has at least some positive component, such as willingness or sexual prowess. Birds are widely regarded as feathers, brained, and flighty. Even the more positive chick and kitten are sweet but helpless pets. Women may also describe or refer it to in terms of food imagery, which is equals insulting saccharine terms such as sugar, sweetie, honey are mainly, though not exclusively, used for addressing women. Less complimentary terms such as crumpet and tart, however, are restricted to female referent. They illustrate a common evolutionary pattern and meaning of words referring to women. Terms which were originally neutral or affectionate eventually acquire negative connotation as they increasingly refer only to women, as their meanings focus on women as sexual objects.
Alright, everybody, we think that's enough from today. If there are any mistakes from us, we apologize to you. Thanks for attention. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.